Throughout the history of the club, Celtic have never been far away from controversy. Often accused of being conspiracy theorists, on many occasions, so-called paranoid fans have been proven to be correct in the end regarding allegations of bias. Let's take a look at just a few conspiracy theories we've heard over the years. Before getting into today's video, I just want to say thanks to everyone for subscribing over the years. I never thought I'd hit 1,000 subs, let alone have the channel performing as well as it is now. I've launched a Patreon where you can help support me to keep producing regular content. There will be exclusive content posted for Patreon members, and I'll have full, unedited videos also available to members, as YouTube copyright claims mean some of the existing channel videos have had to be sliced and edited at times. Thanks so much to anybody kind enough to sign up, and of course, I'll still be posting regular videos on this channel. First up, we'll have to look at Celtic's relationship with referees over the years. Scottish officiating levels have always been considered poor, but they often put these errors down to honest mistakes, while Celtic fans label them as deliberate vindictiveness. Fans of most clubs will frequently gripe on contentious decisions that go against them, so surely it's just a universal issue, and Celtic are no different than anyone else in overly highlighting when referees make dubious calls against them. Well, not exactly. You can go as far back as the 1946 Scottish Victory Cup semi-final replay, where Rangers staff referee Matthew Dale was appointed official for a derby game against Rangers. Dale turned up drunk to the match, causing him to stumble and lose his balance at one point in the game. When Celtic player George Patterson helped him up, he responded by issuing Patterson with a caution. In an August 1977 league game against Ayr, referee Bob Cuddle sent Johnny Doyle off for accidentally hitting him with the ball. Isolated incidents years apart, but just two extreme examples of a pattern of bias Celtic fans would also frequently call out. Then there's the two extreme examples that come to mind. The first being Hugh Dallas's refereeing performance in a May 1999 game against Rangers at Celtic Park. You can find full details on the match in another video on this channel. But to surmise, Dallas sent off two Celtic players, one of which was Stefan Mahe, who was sent off within half an hour. His first yellow card was for complaining about being blatantly fouled, and that was ignored, and his second was for once again pointing out to Dallas that he was allowing Rangers players away without bookings for greater fouls than he was dishing out bookings to Celtic players. In that same game, Dallas was struck by a coin from the crowd, stopped play for several minutes, then immediately awarded Rangers a penalty when play resumed for an innocuous incident where even Celtic midfielder Paul Lambert can be seen stating the penalty was awarded for Dallas being hit with the coin, not the non-existent foul itself. The press sided with the referee and attempted to ridicule attempts by Celtic fans and the Celtic board to point out Dallas's obvious bias. However, an independently hired London-based psychologist stated that Dallas displayed body language which favoured Rangers, including encouragingly patting their players on the backside after awarding them free kicks. But so far, that's just individual incidents, nothing to confirm Celtic fans' suspicions of institutional bias. Then came 2010 and Doogie-gate. In a league game against Dundee United, Celtic were awarded a penalty, only for the decision to be overturned. Assistant referee Stephen Craven would admit he and other officials lied to Celtic manager Neil Lennon about events that led to the overturning of the penalty. The referee was Dougie MacDonald, who himself made the decision to overturn the penalty. MacDonald would falsely claim in his match report that Craven made him aware of his error and asked him to change the decision. The duo met privately after the match and agreed to lie and say it was indeed Craven who made the call. The SFA tried to end the matter there and accused Celtic of unjust paranoia over the incident, even posting days later on the SFA website that they were looking forward to the weekend's games after, quote, another week of unjustified and manufactured controversy surrounding the events of the Dundee United v Celtic match last weekend. However, what they didn't anticipate was Stephen Craven resigning from his refereeing job over the controversy, as he felt he was being made a scapegoat. Craven would say he was ordered to lie about the incident by the SFA head of referee development. And who was in this role? None other than Celtic's old friend, Hugh Dallas. We can see here a collusion amongst officials to try and cover up major decisions going against Celtic. What are the chances this was an isolated incident? And is there more of a likelihood that this was just the only time the truth was publicly revealed? Next up, we look at the COVID season of 2020-21. Celtic were looking to claim a record-breaking 10th consecutive league title, but were trying to do so in a behind closed doors environment as the COVID pandemic of the time dictated. Under the management of Neil Lennon, Celtic were woeful, and under any circumstances didn't deserve to claim the championship that year. However, a January trip to Dubai would lead to Lennon claiming Celtic were the victims of a great injustice. Despite criticism from fans and in the press that taking a mid-season trip to a training camp in Dubai was a needless and arrogant risk, Lennon would later confirm he made the decision to push through and go ahead with the trip. The club would claim all COVID safety measurements were followed and permission was requested and received from the SFA. Elite level athletes were granted dispensation to make the journey, with Lennon insisting this was a professional trip, not an 18 to 30 stag do. Controversy soon arose as photos were leaked from the camp showing players lounging close together by the pool, with Lennon and club captain Scott Brown drinking beers together. Upon returning home, Celtic centre-back Christopher Jullien tested positive for COVID, which, due to increased COVID restrictions from the Scottish Government, meant 13 players and 3 coaches would have to be placed into isolation, missing 2 upcoming league games. After stewing in isolation, Lennon came out swinging in an unforgettable press conference after his isolation had ended. He would state the club were subjected to an absolute barrage of hypocrisy. We've been held to a far higher standard than any other club. Protocols at different clubs are inconsistent. As soon as Celtic are deemed to do something wrong, bang, you're all wanting blood. It's absolutely scandalous. The fallout from this has been way too much. My apology is to the fans because 13 players and 3 staff had to isolate for 10 days, which is ludicrous. I'm not apologising for anything else. I'm not apologising for going out there and training for a week. I'm not apologising for the players having a day off. Lennon would then utter the hilarious quote, "The whole squad is negative, bar 2 players." I think that is remarkable. He would continue, "We did not abuse any privilege," using finger air quotes to emphasise the word privilege. "We did the right things. We were absolutely, totally professional. We had a little drink in the afternoon." He'd finish off calling this a political decision. It was an extraordinary outburst. In truth, Lennon came across as absolutely deranged. Just days previously, assistant manager John Kennedy had even admitted the club were guilty of minor slips in adherence to COVID restrictions. This clearly contrasts with what Lennon said. Scotland's Deputy First Minister John Swinney referred to the trip in advance as not a good idea and not a particularly great example to set. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon commented in the press, "What is the purpose of them being there? I've seen a comment from the club that said it's more for rest and recuperation than it is for training. I've also seen some photographs, and I can only comment on what I've seen as I don't know the full circumstances. That would raise a question in my mind of whether all the rules of what elite players have to do within their bubbles, if social distancing is being complied with." Sturgeon would add Celtic had questions to answer over their warm weather training camp in Dubai and urged the SFA to investigate the trip. Lennon's anger and claims the criticism was political may come from these statements because both the SFA and Scottish Government did allow the trip to go ahead with advanced knowledge. Lennon clearly held a grudge over the initial incident, discussing Nicola Sturgeon just a month later. There just seemed to be a different tack to when she was speaking about us. The fact she brought us into the answer regarding a question about Rangers sort of baffled me as well. I think we as a club have been treated differently from other clubs and other parts of society as well. This does come across as pretty deep into conspiracy theory land, but it's how Lennon felt at the time. Regardless, Celtic CEO Peter Lawwell would publicly apologise to the fans for ever taking the trip, and Lennon would leave his role as Celtic manager just a month after this infamous outburst. In 2006, Celtic won the SPL title comfortably. Alex McLeish's Rangers were miles behind Gordon Strachan's team, and thanks to some early season investment from new Lithuanian owners, Hearts found themselves in the mix for second place as the season drew to an end. In late April, Celtic travelled to Tynecastle, knowing a win could potentially help Rangers leapfrog Hearts into second place and take a spot in the following season's Champions League qualifiers. In the build-up to the match, conspiracy theories ran rife amongst Rangers support, claiming Celtic would lie down to Hearts to allow them to finish above their arch-rivals. Gordon Strachan would say the Celtic squad showed the right attitude all week in training and went into the match wanting to claim another 3 points. 9 minutes after the whistle blew to begin the game, Hearts were 2-0 up. They would score a third in the second half and win the game 3-0. The result meant Hearts needed just one more win out of the remaining 2 games to finish above the Ibrox outfit, which they achieved just 3 days later against Aberdeen. Rangers would suffer the humiliation of finishing third in a 2-horse race and made their anger and suspicions known regarding the result on fan message boards. Celtic fans, usually never happy to lose a game, cheered at the full-time whistle at the joy of infuriating the Teddy Bears. Did the players just turn up already in holiday mode, having easily clinched the league title in advance? Or did a Celtic team deliberately throw a game? Probably the latter, but funny either way. When Rangers died in 2012, there was the potential for Celtic to create such a gap between them and their newly formed rivals that no side out of Ibrox could ever properly compete with Celtic again. Yet in the eyes of many fans, Celtic never fully pushed on to reach their full potential. With Rangers in the lower divisions, Celtic underwent a massive cost-cutting era, with the logic being that the club didn't need to heavily invest while facing such weak domestic opposition. When Rangers did make it to the top flight, Celtic responded by appointing Brendan Rodgers as manager and began an unprecedented era of domestic domination. Yet when Rodgers left in 2019, the downsizing once again began as Rangers started to improve and narrow the gap. There appeared to be a major reluctance from the Celtic board to push too far ahead of their rivals, and many fans theorised the men in the boardroom aimed only to remain a point above Rangers, helping keep the rivalry alive. There may well be a logic to this. If Celtic were to pull so astronomically far ahead that they faced no serious domestic opposition for decades, interest in the Scottish game could flatline completely, and even some Parkhead faithful would grow bored of Celtic cantering to every trophy in sight. But this is a flawed way to run a club, demanding season ticket and merchandise money from fans year in, year out, while refusing to allow the club to grow to the maximum of their potential. The obsession with profit over having the best team possible on the pitch backs this theory up. Particularly in Champions League qualifying over the years, the club turned up woefully unprepared with tens of millions of pounds sitting in the bank unused. Are the board afraid of killing off the old firm brand once and for all? Interesting to note, in 2022, the Celtic board agreed to partake in an old firm friendly game against Rangers in Australia, only for Rangers to end up being the ones to withdraw under pressure from their own fans. Do the Celtic board ultimately believe a close-knit, close-run rivalry with Rangers is the only way to keep business thriving? There's little to say otherwise, as they have never aimed to bury Rangers again, but Celtic's near-total domestic dominance in recent years means they still have the upper hand regardless. And finishing up the list is the infamous Jim Farry incident. Again, I talked about this in detail on the channel in my George Cadetti video. Cadetti arrived at Celtic in 1996 and immediately became a fan favourite due to his electric pace and lethal goal-scoring record. However, his debut was deliberately long delayed due to SFA Chief Executive Jim Farry. Celtic had signed Cadetti prior to the March 31st transfer deadline, but Jim Farry delayed processing the transfer ahead of a Celtic Rangers Scottish Cup semi-final game on April 7th. Celtic lost the game 2-1, playing well but lacking the cutting edge Cadetti could have provided. Ultimately, Cadetti ended up missing 6 matches due to the delay, which included 0-0 draws with Motherwell and Falkirk, as Celtic were locked in an intense title battle with Rangers. Celtic Chief Executive Fergus McCann openly challenged the delay and for years was criticised in the Scottish press for doing so. Evening Times journalist Alan Davidson once printed, "He must recognise the rules of the game were not established to be so blatantly disregarded by a man who knows virtually nothing of the structure of Scottish football." Yet McCann pressed on, and in 1999 the case went to arbitration, with the SFA admitting liability before proceedings could finish. The SFA offered Celtic a written apology as well as agreeing to pay compensation and meet Celtic's legal fees. McCann would state, "It is deplorable that a prominent member club should be disadvantaged in this way when on several occasions the SFA's chief executive had the opportunity to make the correct decision." Mr. Farry's failure to properly register George Cadetti leaves the club in no other position than to ask for the office bearers of the SFA to recognise that Mr. Farry's position is untenable. This case demonstrates that Mr. Farry cannot be allowed to hold and exercise such powerful authority. Farry was sacked shortly thereafter, and Celtic, as well as Fergus McCann, were vindicated. But the incident once again highlighted a seemingly institutional bias against Celtic within Scottish football that leaves lingering suspicions regarding their motivations and actions to this day.